Hey, Jeff, it's Renee. I don't know if you can hear me, but Valeria's not in this meeting. So I should be host. So I signed up as host. So I'm hoping it'll work. Hi, Zach. And I'm not sure who else is on. Bruce, maybe? Can you unmute? I'm just making sure we have the right connections here. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Good. Yes.
I'm here. Hello,
Hi.
hello.
I don't see your camera, but just.
No, I literally just logged on. So
Awesome.
Here's my voice.
Okay, good. I'm going to write to Jeff to make sure that we have the closed captions on.
I get this damn view.
We hear you, Bruce, just so you know.
Okay, trying to figure out why you can't see my face. Not that you want to, but.
Spam. Don't knock it till you fry it. There's a little pork. Please.
I'm not sure your first name, MJ Suber. Is that your first name?
Yes, Councilwoman Renee. This is Mike Suber.
Okay, I was like, I don't know by names. You could change it, but you don't have to if you don't want to. I was just trying to figure out. Hey, hi Faith. Hi Ramos. Hi Annie. Catherine's on. Andres is on. We have closed captions.
Function F8 brings your picture on.
Good to know. Function, okay, that works. I'm just testing the closed captions. Okay. Let's see. I'm dealing with the tech stuff, folks, so bear with me for a moment while I mute.
It's nice to see so many familiar faces, and we really appreciate you all presenting and joining us.
It's been many years for some of us.
Christine, I see you on. Not sure. I see two of you, Christine, on, or maybe it's your husband.
Hi, counselor. Yes. Oh, I hopped on and she hopped off. I was just checking the link. Yes, I'm hopping off. I was just checking the link. I've been trying to spot check all of our Zoom links.
So just checking with you, it's automatically recording even though we haven't started.
Oh yeah.
It's not really what we wanted, but
who's recording it?
I don't know. I think possibly
you are.
I'm not, because I'm the host now, but I think it started with Jeff might have started it that way.
Do you want it recording?
Well, we need to record it when we start the meeting officially.
Oh, gotcha. Because you're the host, Councilwoman, you can stop it and then start the recording when you want, or when the meeting starts. If you go to your more.
I don't have any option to stop it. It just says live on YouTube, live on custom live streaming service, which.
No, if you go to the panel side and hit more.
I did.
Okay, and it's not giving you that option? No. Okay. I don't know what you're seeing because I'm not hosting this one. But
I don't even know how to add you as a, let's see, who can share advanced all participants? Okay. I mean, we could just keep it. We'll just.
No worries. I'm hopping off. I was just testing all the links. I'm just testing links this week. So, but if you need anything, you can send me a text.
Okay, I will. Thank you. Let's see. Emily, I'm just looking for members here. We have Annie. We have Bruce. We have Emily. There she is. We have Mary Louise jumping on. Still waiting for Chris. There's Chris. Marcela. Hey, Chris. We're still waiting for a couple members. Marcela, Monica. Unless we have a second page here. Let's see. Well, we have a lot of people here. It's great. We don't have staff, y'all. That's why Chris and I have to play tech experts. So hopefully we can get this going in a bit. Let me make sure that we have our members. If the members are here.
I'm here. This is Mary Louise.
Yes, great, great. I think we're waiting for a couple more. Just making sure cameras are not off for the members.
I see Mary Louise, Bruce, Annie, Emily. That's all I see on my side. I know Gino was he had a planned vacation. He was gonna try to get on, but.
No need to do that on your vacation.
That's what I told him, but.
No. Okay, we'll see if he shows up. Let's see. There's Monica. Do you see Marcela yet?
Heard her earlier.
Monica, can you hear us, and can you turn on your camera if you can? Oh, your internet is not working well. Can you hear us at least and put on? I don't see her yet. Okay.
So I think everyone's here except Marcella, who's having internet issues. Is that right?
That's Monica. She said she was having internet issues.
Oh.
There she is. There's Marcela. Monica, can you try to unmute so we know that you at least, there we go. Okay. Can you hear us, Monica? Okay, great. I think that's it, right, Chris? Are we missing anybody?
No, that looks.
Let me document this real quick. Our usual facilitator, it's her birthday today, Valeria, so she will not be joining us, which is good. She should be off. So Chris and I will be running most of it, and we primarily have presentations today, and these are information sessions. So we can start the meeting then. I'm going to go ahead and call Chris, you're going to go ahead and take this, but I'm going to make sure we have a correct roll call for the Community Health and Safety Task Force meeting for February 22nd, 2022. And we have Annie and Emily and Marcela and Monica and Bruce and Mary Louise. Sorry, I didn't see you. You're on my other Zoom page. And who else am I missing here? Did I miss anybody? Chris, you and I?
Yeah, you and I.
All right.
Doing. And then Gino's excused because he's on a pre-planned vacation. So
got it. All right.
Any communications from the co-chairs? Do you have anything besides what you just did?
I just wanted to welcome Gino Zamora to our group, but we'll do that the next time when he's actually with us. So I think that's it.
Yeah, same here. So communications from the facilitator, she's out. Working group updates. I don't know if we want to save that till later.
We could say that at the end of the meeting, since we have so many folks, which is awesome to have so many guests and presenters today. So we'll move that to the end of the agenda. And if you're okay with it, Chris, we can go ahead and start off with our presentations. We have 3 tonight, y'all. So let's be concise. Make sure we stay on task, ask questions, and then make sure that we have time for the other 2 because we have 3. And our guests, you're welcome to stay for the other presentations if they interest you. So thank you. I'll hand it over to Chris.
Thank you. Our first presentation is from the Fire Department, Gender Equity, Gender Imbalance Study with Faith Applewhite and Ramos Sosi. I don't know who's starting out. Or is Kira on? Is the director on? Kira, do you want to get us started and then introduce and then we'll go from there?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the task force. Tonight, Faith Applewhite and Ramos Sosi are here to present the report that they were asked to put together by Chief Paul Babcock on really essentially asking the question of why there weren't more women in the fire department. They did a very thorough job of talking with women firefighters, looking at some you have the report, so you know what's in the report, but some national trends and coming up with some possible suggestions about how to create more gender equity. So I think there's, as you can see, a lot of interest in this topic on the call based on everyone who's here. Chief Moya, would you like to say anything in introducing the work?
Madam Chair, I think Councillor left, so thank you for having us. I appreciate the opportunity to let these great individuals speak. I've known both of them for a very long time, and they have both given me the presentation, so I support what they're doing 100%. And I feel like us moving forward and me being the new chief will continue to develop and hopefully be able to change. I will let you know, both of them let me know, I can't do this by myself. So I need the support of my boss. I need the support of the counselors. I need the support of everybody. So this is something that is a huge undertaking. It's not going to be fixed in a year. It's not going to be fixed in 1 or 2. You know, it's going to take a lot. So I appreciate both of them, and I will turn over to both of them right now, and we'll get this started. I think they need screen share abilities also.
Thank you, Chief. Are you guys are you screen sharing under yourself, Ramos?
There we go.
I'm trying to do that now. Is that coming up?
Yes.
See the,
Ramos, we kind of hear you in and out a little bit.
can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I think I just have to be close to the screen. Okay, well, I'd just like to start by thanking Madam Chair, Rivera, and the rest of the task force for inviting us here tonight. Thank you to Chief Moya as well. He called to reassure me that he did not want to make me change or edit my presentation or what I had to say, but he was very curious and wanted to understand it. And then also grateful to Captain Applewhite just for co-presenting here. My intention is not to reiterate what's in the report, but to add some context to the report, and then do a little bit of information on what happened after I gave that report to Chief Babcock. There we go. So just a quick little bit of information on me and why I'm here tonight. I was raised in Santa Fe. My mom is white. My dad is Native American. Gave me a little perspective in 2 different worlds. So I graduated from the Santa Fe Prep School. So I've experienced privilege, and I've also taken part in life at the Pueblo and seen what that's like, which is very different than someplace like the prep school. I've been in the fire service a little over 25 years. I started as a volunteer in like 94, came on full time with the city in 97, and worked here for about 9 years before I moved to the county. I worked in the county, which is a mixed system, so there's volunteers. So it just opened my eyes just to the what it's like to work with that kind of diversity. Volunteers, there's very many different kinds of volunteers. And we were able to, fight fire and provide EMS in that context. I also worked in Taos, which is a county-based EMS system that is not fire-based. And I've worked in the private sector on a helicopter care flight here in town doing EMS in that context. So something that it took me a little while to realize when I started in 97, I was very much into fire. It was completely my focus. I think I got my EMT license just so I could be in the fire department. But over time, I realized that we're a healthcare provider. That intrigued me. I became a paramedic, and it took me a little longer. I'm still working on it. Just to understand what it means to be a healthcare provider, the vulnerability that a person has when they are a patient. I've experienced it in myself. It was a big eye opener to get my appendix out and be in the ER that I marched through as a paramedic, with just a gown on, and just experience the vulnerability that you have as a patient. So I'm trying to understand that better. And I think diversity, just improved diversity will improve our ability to provide care and be aware of different vulnerabilities that our patients might have. So we have about 16,000 medical calls each year in the fire department. So that's a lot of contact with the public in that context. The report is focused on gender, but I do understand that diversity includes many things like race, age, sexual orientation, personality traits, ethnicity, but it was just, I guess, what came to me is at this point, 2 years ago, having just looking at a decade having gone by without having successfully gotten a woman through the process of probation and out into the field seemed like a lot. So, I mean, I guess the word in my head was egregious. That's a big thing. I guess I brought that up through the chain of command. I spoke with my chief, we spoke to his chief, we spoke to Chief Babcock. And after that discussion, Chief Babcock asked for us to pursue it, and we worked on a survey. We sent a survey out to the 16 women that we could identify who had worked for the fire department historically. I think we made contact with 13 of them. We did our best effort to give the questions that would help us understand this, but I think some of the feedback we got was that the survey didn't adequately provide the safety that might be needed for some of the women to report some of the more egregious or scary things that happened to them. So the report does not include some of the more sensitive items that women experienced. So we compiled that after looking at some other paperwork, like reports on it, on diversity in the fire service. Those are included in the report. And as I reviewed the report, I saw a lot of the use of the word I, and I became sort of self-conscious about that. And after further reflection, I remembered and realized that, this is a sensitive issue. It's kind of it can be upsetting. To me personally, it could feel scary to talk about it openly. And so I didn't want to drag anybody else into that. I'd gotten to the point where I could retire, and I felt like if it was too uncomfortable or it was just a problem for me, I was in a place that I could just retire. I'd reached my 20 years. So I just wanted to note that that's why I use the I so much in the report, despite a lot of people contributing to that report. The committee was, I guess the chief asked us to put the committee together. We had 7 members. There were 4 women, 3 men, 1 Hispanic, 1 Native. 6 of us were currently employed in the fire department, and we had 1 retired chief as well. I think we met, 10 or so times, and we talked about a lot of different subjects like social media, camps for young women, community presentations, testing options, policy options, and after a while, I think we felt like we wanted to have some tangible thing we could do, and we focused our efforts on a policy, and we came up with the lactation policy. And I can talk a little bit about that more later in the presentation. That slide is just a repeat of the previous information. So here you see a photograph of my academy in 1997. I think there were 13 of us. There's 1 person missing, but we had 3 women in that academy, and that's 13, it's 23% of that group of hirees were women, and that's commendable. And I think it's, so we've done it, and I'm just curious why we're having trouble doing it again. We have not been able to get a woman through probation since March of 2010. And I believe that this is directly related to the process by which we recruit, test, hire, and train. So without further assessments, we can look at this fact and either accept this is what we want, or face the fact that in order to improve diversity, we'll have to make substantial, uncomfortable, and perhaps controversial change. Something I guess I also have a note in that I didn't mention is just that as far as I'm aware, I don't believe we have any openly LGBTQ plus firefighters currently. So anyway, with that, I'll turn it over to Captain Applewhite.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for having us. Thank you, Ramos, for what you've done. And thank you, Chief Moya, for supporting this effort. I do want to acknowledge that I am white. I identify as cisgender and heterosexual. So by no means do I mean to speak for every diversity group, but I just thought that maybe I could offer some perspective on the firsthand experience of being a woman in the fire department. How's my audio? Can you guys hear?
You sound great. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So like Ramos, my history is pretty varied. I started volunteering when I actually can't find my start date in my little personal planners from back then. But actually my dad happens to be on, so maybe he remembers. I was 14 or 15 at the time. I got my EMT license when I was 16, got my EMT intermediate license when I was 17, and started working as an EMT when I was 18. And actually Chief Moya and I were teenage volunteers together in Santa Fe County. I took some time off between high school and college to work full-time as an EMT on the ambulance. I worked in Espanola City, Rio Arriba County, Town of Bernalillo EMS, and Valencia County. And I also started working around that time part-time as a firefighter at Santa Fe County. So at that time, Santa Fe County had a program where they would backfill absences from their full-time field staff with part-time firefighters. So I was going to school in Washington State, but I would fly back sometimes on weekends, sometimes on breaks, and work 24, 48, 72, 96-hour shifts. I was just so in love with the profession. And I mentioned the Santa Fe County part because I think that it was really integral to my having gotten into the city. In winter of 2008, I finished, so I went straight from school in Washington State to paramedic school at the community college here. And then straight from that into my internship, and then Santa Fe City was hiring. And I had always wanted to work for Santa Fe City. I think Councilor Rivera had helped me start third riding. I don't know how long ago. I think I was 15 or so when I started third riding at the city fire department. And so when the testing process opened in the winter of 2008, 2009, I was pretty excited. And I do think that it was because I had access to the same tools that they use for firefighter tests. Both at the Santa Fe County Fire Department where I was working and at actually Espanola Fire Department, I was working on the ambulance, but we were friends with the firefighters. And I was able to go almost every day and practice the hose hoist, the dummy drag, the ladder raise, all of those skills. And I pretty much lived in a 45-pound weighted vest leading up to the testing. So I think that that's why I was able to pass the test to get in. That testing process again was winter of 2008, and then rolled into the 26th Cadet Academy, March 2009. So for the next few slides, orange will represent men and purple will represent women. So I believe that the 26th Cadet Academy was started as 19 men and me. That was March of 2009, and finished as 16 men and me. I see a few of my academy mates on there, so maybe they could correct me if I'm wrong, or on the attendees list. I remember pretty well, I should say around that same time, then Chief Rivera, you were getting ready to hand the chief position over to Chief Salas. So, and you can see Chief Salas in this newspaper article on the right. There was a lot of press about women in the fire department at that time. I remember this article on the left. I actually had thrown it away. I never wanted to see it again at the time because I was so humiliated by it, like pit stains and all, right? But we were told the day before that reporters would be coming to interview us during the academy, and I actually requested to decline the interview and to not be pictured. But I was told that it was a direct order that I participate in the interview and the pictures. And then the next morning when the article came out, we actually endured quite a bit of punishment PT for that decision of mine to participate, although it felt like it wasn't really a decision of mine. So the New Mexican had an article, the Journal had an article, and then it's interesting, I just thought it was kind of interesting that as I was searching for this, I remembered that one of the articles was titled Breaking into the Boys Club. And so I searched that, and an article from July 2021 came up. I think it featured some women, or at least one woman who passed the agility test at that time, so this last summer, but they didn't end up in the academy that we currently have. So no women are current cadets, as far as I can tell, as far as I have heard. So I also, when I was in the academy, there was a physical agility test to get out of the academy. It was called the 350, and it was 350 calisthenic movements. And it started with 10 pull-ups, 20 dips, 50 push-ups, I think, if I remember correctly. And I could do one pull-up at the beginning of the academy. And I think during the academy, I had heard from the training seeing us that I would be offered the opportunity to do a hang test, the women's equivalent that the military used for pull-ups at that time. But I really was hopeful that I would be able to do some, the actual pull-ups. And to get out of the academy, if I remember correctly, I ended up doing chin-ups, so underhanded pull-ups, not overhanded pull-ups. And then to get off probation, I just worked my butt off on pull-ups specifically in the few months between getting out of the academy and probation ending, and eked out 10 pull-ups, although Chief Martinez, I see you're on here and I think you were in there, so you might be questioning my form on those pull-ups, but ended up taking the test to the male standards. So we had a ceremony at that time to get off probation, and I just remember really vividly one of the then battalion chiefs, he no longer works at the department, coming up to me and saying, "Applewhite, I'm so glad you passed the agility test to the men's standards." And I said, "Thank you, sir." And he said, "Because now we never have to hire another woman who doesn't." And that took me aback a little bit, but mostly I just was kind of happy to receive that kind of what seemed like positive feedback in that moment. And the reason I relay that anecdote, even though it's pretty uncomfortable in a public meeting, is that I think it was kind of symbolic of a lot of the types of exchanges that I had, especially in the first 5 years in the department, where people would say things, a lot of people would say things to me like, "Oh, you're the cool girl," or it's cool because you work out so much," or whatever it was at the time. And it felt really good to receive those types of comments. But I didn't realize at the time so much that that's kind of a common thing that happens with marginalized groups and with tokenism. And that each of those comments is actually a comment at the expense of other women in the department, and that I'm sure that they were receiving that many or more comments, similar comments about me. So I actually, at that time, especially when I got in, and actually probably for the first decade that I worked in the department, I was secretly happy to be one of so few women who worked at the fire department. To be honest, every academy that passed by without hiring a woman, I felt more and more elite. But sorry, it's hard to say this without crying, but I ended up interacting with so many women on calls who would look at me and say, you have no idea how glad I am to see a woman here. And so I just couldn't deny anymore that we needed to hire more women this time. So anyway, in 2009, I think that we had about 140 to 160 field staff, 7 of whom were women. Right now, I think we have somewhere between 160 and 180 field staff, and 3 are women. This is only including women who've been through the academy, so it's not including our administrative assistants and case managers and fleet. And then I just wanted to personalize it a little bit and show some photographs of the women that I have had the opportunity to serve alongside. So on the far left is Janet DeLuzio. She was not a firefighter. She's actually the wife of Frank DeLuzio. He was, I think, the chief who, I know he made it one of his goals to hire a bunch of women, and I think that he might have been the chief who hired the most women. So starting from the purple sweatshirt on to the right, it's all women who've worked at the fire department, at the city fire department. So we have Chief Katie Cassidy, that's me hiding in the back. We have Chief Barbara Salas, Chief Sheila Bueller, and Linda, who retired as a captain. And then in the bottom, we have a fun on-duty picture of Chief Bueller, Captain Snyder, and myself doing some PT. And so something that sticks out to me as I look back at this report is just the average career length for women in the department is 11 years or 10, depending on whether you're looking at median or mean. And I think that that really speaks to the fact that this conversation can so easily lead to us having debates about how to get more women in the door, or how to train women so that they can pass the agility test. But I think it's also imperative that we look at, once women are in, is it a comfortable place to work? Is it a welcoming and inclusive place to work? And that brings me to my last slide for this portion, which is just most of these conversations that I've heard around have involved, okay, well, let's make sure that we brand and know that we want our department that want women to work for us. Let's recruit specifically for women, or let's talk about the testing process. But I think, first of all, that has some inherent applications that the problem is the women. I do actually think that it's incumbent upon us to look at the structure and culture of our department and really examine and do some internal investigation about how we can change those as well. Cultural change is really tricky. I don't think it's something that I, as a fairly less powerful person in the department, can speak to how to do in particular. But I do have some ideas about structural change. And structural change could mean everything from the way the stations are laid out, uniforms, lots of different things. But the one that I thought might be useful to point out is an alternative shift schedule. So day shift is an idea that has been floating around. Actually first heard about it at some trade conferences a few years ago. And it is an alternative to the typical 48, 96 hour shift schedule. So we typically, firefighters work 2 days on and then have 4 days off. And a day shift instead is something like 12-hour shifts, like say Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then alternating Wednesdays. And that, first of all, it's pretty dang hard to argue that it's not a more efficient staffing model. But second of all, it is perhaps more friendly for new families. This came in to be a little passion of mine when I was a new mom. I had a 12-week-old at home, and leaving my kiddo at home for 48 hours at a time was, it just felt super unnatural. So it's not just a maternity accommodation. I think I've talked with a number of men who would appreciate that accommodation for their family members, whether it's a new baby or an aging parent. So just having some alternative shift schedules. The reason that I wanted to point this one out is because it's not a particularly impossible thing to imagine. It doesn't seem like it requires a bunch of cultural change, and it is a responsible and efficient staffing model for the citizens of our community. So I'll turn the last slide over to Paramedic Sosi again.
Thanks, Captain. In regard to that 4896, I was actually part of the effort to bring that into the fire department here in Santa Fe. And at the time, I had a very binary sort of thinking about it. I thought it would be either you work this 4896 or another one. But what I've come to understand now and believe is that, the 4896 can still exist, and people that works for should be able to access that and have that and enjoy that schedule, but that to have an option as well. So it's an and sort of situation. And that applies to the lactation policy. Part of the proposal in the lactation policy was to allow a mother to work some sort of day shift type schedule. So there's a few options in that. So I just wanted to note some barriers that we came across. I felt that the diversity committee was lacking, and I talked to Chief Babcock about this, that I didn't have any senior officers. So we had a few captains, but it didn't go above that level. The diversity committee was also lacking a larger community perspective, which I think might give us some accountability to the broader community, because it only included the currently employed firefighters and then the one retired chief. And the last two bullets, I just want to frame in a way that it's not trying to make anybody look bad per se. I do feel that it's important to, I think you're getting a report, a presentation on restorative justice, and that's really about not vilifying anyone or making anyone wrong. It's about being curious about what blocks us from getting where we want to go and focusing on the outcome. So I think that these two last bullets could be construed as a sort of negative or making HR look bad, and that is definitely not the intention. My intention here was just that, maybe that applies to the low level that the diversity committee had, or my position that, and my, so I wasn't able to get demographic information, and HR had some difficulties in attaining that. So anyway, I think you can hear more from them about that if you like. And the lactation policy, I did deliver to Chief Babcock, and while it says it never made it through HR here, I can't speak to whether it even got to HR. So I did deliver it to Babcock, and that's as far as I was aware of it going. The last bullet, I hope this isn't taken in a negative way, but I do feel that it's an accurate statement that change has to go through HR. They're a big player in this, so any effort will have to have their full and enthusiastic support. So I hope you can hear that in the most positive and factual way without feeling like anybody needs to be on the defensive. So with that, I think that concludes our report, and
I'll before we move on, since HR is here, I'd like to give Ms. Salazar an opportunity to respond to what Mr. Sosi said, and give you a few minutes to do that. Ms. Salazar.
Thank you, Councilor Rivera, and thank you all for your time. I appreciate the work that the team has put into this effort. And I just wanted to let everyone know that HR wholeheartedly supports efforts to have our policies be more inclusionary. And definitely if I receive a lactation policy, we would explore that and determine what needs to be done for implementation. We currently, of course, abide by federal and state regulations that allow for reasonable break period times and location for lactation. So that's already in place, and we work closely with the department, not only fire department, but all other city departments in these efforts for these types of accommodations. And again, certainly we would love the opportunity to review any draft policies. A lot of these policies would affect union employees, and so not only would we have to work with the union, HR, and legal to get some of these policies implemented, but again, HR is very happy to review any proposals to promote a more inclusionary workforce. And again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Salazar. Anything, Director Ochoa, before we move to questions or comments from the committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd just like to thank Captain Applewhite and Ramos Sosi for their dedication to the department, to the community, and to getting to the heart of this issue. This is a difficult conversation to have. It's a difficult conversation to have publicly. I think it's important. I would like to say that, I read their report when I first came onto the job as the Community Health and Safety Director. And I take responsibility that it didn't go to the top of my list of things that I had to do in the first 90 days of my time here. But I'm glad we're having this discussion now. To the point about HR, I really think that we are all a team at the city, and our departments need to work together as a team. People within the fire department need to be a team. People within the community health and safety department need to be a team. We're getting to the bottom of why that policy didn't make its way to Bernadette. It didn't, and it's not that she saw it and didn't regard it. And again, in looking at it initially, it looks like it's a miscommunication between fire department staff and HR staff. That's all I'll say for now. We're trying to get to the bottom of that. But I think what that speaks to is not any sort of, let's say, intentional disregard for an issue, but a context in which we're all working, which is bureaucratic, overloaded, and in that context, culture change, structural change is very challenging. So I think what we can do is give each other the benefit of the doubt, work together, as we very much want to work with the task force to really improve the situation. I think what Captain Applewhite, the part of the presentation that stood out to me was her very poignant description of coming to a family's home and a woman telling her how happy she was to be served by another woman, which is not to say that a man can't serve a woman in a really wonderful way as well. But I think that is the kernel of why it's so important to have a fire department that reflects our community. And so with that, I'll stop and turn it over to you all.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the committee, and this can be for Kira, Chief, Mr. Sosi, Captain Applewhite, those staff members. So any questions or comments from the committee?
Chris, before we go into questions, and Annie has her hand raised, I just want to make a comment and give a little bit of context as to why this presentation happened tonight. And I just wanted to thank Captain Applewhite and Ramos for taking the time to be with us and to speak frankly and honestly about issues and things that, you know, I think they're not about trying to expose, they're just really trying to look at issues that where we're looking at deficiencies and not putting blame on individuals about why things have not occurred, but really just bringing them to light so that we can look at potential recommendations for structural and cultural changes. And I know there's a lot of folks on this call, many in the fire department, many, you know, some may appreciate this conversation, maybe some feel uncomfortable about it, but it's really not to place blame on any individual or past leadership. It's really about focusing on the now, looking at cultural shifts, and also like what's happening across the country. And change is happening. And I think it's just good to think about ways that we can go against the grain and that it potentially will be better in the long run for everybody. I just think that it takes that bravery that we talked about, that Captain Applewhite and Ramos brought up. So I appreciate them taking the time to do that and actually being vulnerable with us, because I think being vulnerable makes us human. So we want to be human when we're interacting with people in the public. So with that, I think, well, Annie had her hand up first. I don't know if Director Ochoa, did you have something?
Sorry, I forgot to say a couple of things that I think are important to know. A couple of things that, you know, have come out of the reading of the report and the conversation in the fire department and in the conversation about change generally is that we are commissioning a workforce study and community risk assessment for the coming year that will give us a portrait of the workforce, which may be able to implement some of the schedule changes that Captain Applewhite mentioned. And then also we've started to do crisis intervention training and intend to do much more training. We have a lot more resources than we've ever had in the fire department to do some really high quality training. So those are just a couple of things that we are doing to address some of the issues raised tonight.
Thank you, Director Ochoa. And I'll just add the reason why this topic came as a presentation, it was at the request of members of the Community Health and Safety Task Force. So we are actually doing this in many different ways, presentations on just information gathering. So this was one topic, and there's plenty of other topics that we'll be having presentations on. So I'll go ahead and pass it to Annie, and then Bruce. And Chris, I'll let you know if there's anyone else raising their hand. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. And thank you to the presenters and for HR and the chiefs and everyone being here. The committee really appreciates it. And my first questions are to HR and Chief Moya. As the fire department calls have changed, it looks like now it's about 80% EMS and less than 2% fire. Is there a plan to move the hiring, testing, and the training away from like pull-ups, as Faith had said, to more patient care? And then my second question is, I'm a former firefighter with the city of Santa Fe. I was a female firefighter there for 7 years. So knowing the internal culture, if someone complains about harassment or abuse, how are they protected?
Chief Moya, you want to take that first?
Hey, Mr. Chair, Counselor, or committee member Raskin, thank you for the question. We are not going away. We still have to hire firemen. We are a PRA, the plan is PRA Plan 5, so fire plan. So if we go away from that, we lose that plan. So we will have to change things. We can't just go away from doing fires. You know, it's a safety net. We will be more cultural change. I have my training officer on the call with me, but we still have to do all of these things. We are not going to just go away from this structure. We still have to provide that kind of service to the community. But we will be more changing in the way we do things in the future. We have added the new training that we gave the whole department. We have added that to the academy this time, but it's not just changing how we do things or doing that, because if that one call happens and we're not prepared for that fire or whatever that is, we will struggle. We're going to struggle. We might lose a fireman. We might lose that person in that house if we're not prepared. So we might prepare more for the fires because we don't do them as often, but we still have to continue to move forward, and we still have to continue to provide that service to the community. So just because our numbers are low and our fires, we don't have as many, it's due to our good fire prevention. So I have a division we really don't talk about. Fire prevention does a great job in preventing fires and helping the community move forward. So we will continue to strive to make changes, but our name is Santa Fe Fire Department, and we continue to support that. I believe in that. I've been here doing this for 20 years now. So we can add those things to us, just like the D-shift thing. I can't do it with the current models. We have to expand. We have to put more people on there. You know, we still have to have those response times in District 8. You know, I don't have a close ambulance or fire truck, so we have to be within that 2 minute time frame. So we still have to move forward. I know that we need to change. I know we need to do a better job, but we also have to provide the whole service we still provide for the community. We're not just going to go away from this because we don't have enough fires. I hope that answered your question. I'm being as direct as I can, but yeah, we are trying to change. We're trying to get better, and we're trying to evolve. I think that's something that I've been trying to do over the last 2 months, and expand on what Chief Babcock did. But I hope we move forward in the right direction.
Ms. Salazar.
Thank you, Committee Member Raskin. Our complaint process, employees can submit complaints anytime. They are protected under city policy and our anti-retaliation policies, as well as whistleblower protection policies at the state level that translate to city policies. There's the complaint process. Employees can also file grievances. They can go that direction as well. But we definitely have anti-retaliation policies in place. And through the course of a complaint process, anyone filing a complaint is reminded that if they experience any retaliation in the process, not only after, but of course during the process, when investigation interviews are conducted, they are provided with a resource to call in the event that they might experience that. So we take that very seriously to ensure that people don't have those experiences.
Thank you. I do have one last question for Captain Applewhite and for Mr. Sosi. I've noticed a lot of the same people are in this presentation that were in the MIHO, the Alternative Response Unit. And I'm wondering what your perspective is on patient care and public service from the fire department, and diversity, if increased diversity has an impact that you've seen on patient care.
Thank you, Annie. Yeah, I'm extremely grateful to have 25 years in the fire service. It's such a privilege to serve the community in this way. People call us at their most vulnerable times. I think we do a really good job of that. Everybody here really wants to serve the public. And so I think I've been here all these years because I feel like it's such a great opportunity to serve, and I get a lot from that. But I think, it does help to have an understanding of the person's perspective. And the more diversity we have, I think would improve that. So, like the description of what Captain Applewhite had about women being patients. My wife actually joined the fire department because she saw a rape and saw that the woman wanted a woman to be there for her. And so that's what motivated her to join the fire department. So it's not to say that anybody's bad, but just more diversity is good. I think it helps us open our eyes and be aware of different sensitivities and perspectives. I don't know if you have more to add.
Anything else, Annie? You still have the floor.
Thank you.
Very good. Bruce, you have a next question or a comment?
Thank you, Counselor. For those of you who on this presentation who don't know me, I went through a law enforcement training academy close to 40 years ago. And at that time, we were asked to run a mile and a half. And it wasn't anything to do with our because I went to law enforcement academy in Illinois, and it was nothing to do with us passing or anything. It was to do with setting a standard. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And I believe the fire department is kind of similar in a sense to the law enforcement fitness test issues. But my question would be, in the light of what the Santa Fe Fire Department, most of their calls now are medical assist type, from what I've seen, and correct me if I'm wrong, medical assist type issues. Could the city modify the testing procedure to allow people that can't do 20 pull-ups come into the fire department? That was my question. Thank you.
Chief Moya or Chief Rick? Chief Moya, I guess.
Mr. Chair, Member Finger, yeah, so we have changed how we've hired people. When I was health and safety officer 3 years ago, we changed how we did it. We went to an outside company with the help of Director Salazar. We went to a different company. We don't require pull-ups to get into the fire academy. So we went to a different strategy. We made it so it was able to be validated. We validated internally. They had a company come in and validate this process. We did things differently because some things weren't right. We never really pulled up, 3-inch hose up the side of the tower. That's how I got in the fire department. So we have changed how we've done it. We've given people multiple times to come try our physical agility course. We've changed how we've done things. Chief Rick and I, when I worked for him in the training division, we did Saturday sessions. We've expanded it so on Saturdays they can come practice each assessment of the course, and then they can test out at the end of the day. And if they pass, we give them a certificate, and they can use that to apply when we have an opening, and they don't have to redo the course again. So we have changed how we've done things. We've changed the culture. We have tried to make it, we want you to proceed. When I started 20 years ago, if you failed, see you in a year and a half, or see you in 2 years. So we've tried to make the process better, tried to make the process easier, to the fact of we're giving you more chances. We want you to work for us. We don't want you to get discouraged and have to wait a year until we hire again. And I'm also doing a lot of laterals. I just hired 2 laterals, firefighters, and I hired a lateral paramedic. And I'm seeing the value, and we don't have to train everybody. If they can come from a different department and they have the skills, we'll give them a short training and we'll put them out in the field. So we are changing how we do things. We're changing how the culture, and it's done over time. It's not changed overnight. So we are getting better at, showing the crews that we can do these things, we can do them differently, and it still is the same outcome. So I hope that helps with you, Member Finger.
Thank you, Chief. Frick, you're directly involved in the hiring process and the training process. Did you have anything to add?
Not specifically. I guess I should tag on to what Chief Moya has said. I don't know how long we want to talk today. I can talk about training all day long, given that it is the division that I run. We have changed things quite a bit over the years. The way that the Cadet Academy works is generally the first 13 weeks are related to firefighting, because we need people to get credentialed in that. And then the next weeks are devoted, the next 8 weeks are devoted to EMS training. And so they get substantial training in both. To more directly answer your question, could we direct training more to EMS? Certainly, but what we're doing is, how do I say this? The EMT training is a licensure in the state of New Mexico, and we prepare people specifically to become an entry-level EMT, which is the EMT basic level. For those who choose to move up, there are additional trainings that come later if they volunteer, or what is called EMT intermediate and paramedic. Those happen outside of the context of the Cadet Academy. So they get extensive training in both. And it is worth me adding, there are no pull-up requirements. We changed that stuff a decade ago. There are physical requirements, and they're specifically related to the tasks of firefighting. There's nothing related to a specific amount of weight per se on a bar or a number of pull-ups. So in that way, it's changed quite a bit. Could that be up for discussion? Obviously, people are going to have their opinions on any number of things that we do, and that's a fair discussion to have for sure.
Thank you, Chief Rick. Bruce, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Eli. I appreciate your standing in the department. I retired as a training director for a department, so I know where you're coming from. I was just concerned with the entry level physical requirements, because sometimes they can weed out people that are would really be productive to the department on the EMT side. But no, I understand all the state regs and stuff. So it's comforting to know that the city can kind of go off page and get the people they want. So thank you, Counselor. I'm good.
Thank you, Bruce. Emily, your hand is up.
Hi, good evening. Really want to thank Captain Applewhite and Mr. Tosi for the presentation and the leadership and the candid information shared with us today. And just as a parent of an 8-year-old girl, I want to thank you, Captain, for being this incredible role model for our children. I was also struck, Captain, by your comment about the easy changes we can make are around recruitment and branding, and how that really does put the burden back on women in this case, getting into this profession. And so my questions are really one around, were there other recommendations that addressed culture, and or has that been a discussion? Are there ideas that folks could share with this task force as we think about creating recommendations back to the council and to the mayor and to staff that we should be thinking about when it, and I know that culture change is really hard, but it's really important. And then just as another question is whether this diversity committee is going to continue to meet and what other issues, if so, what other issues will be discussed or tackled.
Thanks so much. I'll hand it over to Ramos in a second. But we did have some, I think the report covered some recommendations. Pretty.
Faith, can you get a little bit closer to the microphone?
Got it. Sorry about that.
Lovely computer can't hear.
Okay, how's this? The report did have a few recommendations in regards to culture change. And I think that we also would look to stakeholders like you to advise on that and the chiefs and everybody, the whole community. I think the recommendation in the report was that maybe a moderator, a change facilitator be brought in. I don't really know a lot about organizational culture change, but yes, certainly there are also some more structural changes that could happen, I think, and those are specifically addressed in the report itself. And then, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I can just add that there are recommendations in the report, and that was mostly composed by me, so it's one person. Just keep that in mind. One person's interpretation of what I heard. So I tried to take what I heard from the people who responded, all the women. They had different experiences, and I really wanted to try to pass that along and not edit it and say, this qualifies for a recommendation and this doesn't. So I hope you can see that the recommendations in that report anyway are a result of the feedback that I had after speaking with the various women that responded to the initial survey. And then there were a few that I was able to have like a longer conversation with and talk more about different options. So that's how those things got into the report.
I think I'll just add there are other changes that I know are kind of slow in coming, just uniforms that fit women, stations that are comfortable for women, bunk rooms that are comfortable for women, bathrooms that are comfortable for women. Those are all kind of, in my mind at least, examples of structural changes that are not no cost, but they are also not super difficult or challenging culturally. So thank you. Oh, and the diversity committee hasn't met. I don't know if you can speak to.
Since we delivered that lactation policy to Chief Babcock, we haven't met since then. I did tell him that I thought we needed to expand it or have at least a chief officer involved in it, and nothing happened from there. So currently we're sort of on hold or limbo.
Emily, you still have the floor.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. Those responses. I don't think I have further questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thanks, Chris. Just follow up on that piece about, I guess the piece that is probably feels uncomfortable is that having staff do an assessment on the place they work. And I don't think they should have put them in that position, although you had a lot of knowledge and probably contacts to be able to assess that, and the former women that were part of the department. I just think that when we do this, or maybe when we keep looking at potential changes, that when we do an assessment, we need a neutral party, and they need to be able to interview people and make them feel safe in their assessment. And the other thing, it would be good to kind of get an assessment too of the folks that weren't part of the study, like having an overall picture of the attitudes and perspectives or the lack of gender diversity in the force, and not just serving a small group, but just looking at it from a holistic point of view and then narrowing down. So I'm just suggesting that as we move forward, if staff's thinking of doing something to get a clear picture about what's happening and maybe update from what was already done, because I think that was helpful from a qualitative point of view. So that's just a comment. And then the other question I had, well, it was, one question was about the lactation policy. I was just curious why it was only up to 1 year after a child's birth, because I know plenty of women that actually breastfeed beyond that. So
yeah,
you know anything about that?
The federal law only requires an organization to have lactation accommodations up to 1 year after birth, and that was kind of the context that it was always framed in. I think it was brought in.
Faith, I don't know what's happening with your volume.
Come in and out, go back and forth again, because it lost you again with the vote.
Right, can you hear me? Is that okay?
Come a little closer again. Sorry.
How's that?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so I think that it was that was the context of, or the framework of the policy throughout, because that's a federal requirement, but we would definitely be open to longer accommodations being in play. It felt like a big lift just to try to structure that 1 year. So that was the context that the conversations had been in, just because that's the federal law.
Yeah, that's the minimum, I think. And I think other local jurisdictions can actually do.
They can choose. It seems like also my perception is that they can choose.
Thank you. And then maybe another time someone can explain, because I don't think we have time tonight, about the shifts and how they vary, and then what that would look like for a nursing staff person, and how they would be able to accommodate. Sorry, my computer just went on mute without me touching it. So maybe I'll talk about that later, about shifts, so I can understand the variety of those. The other question I had was about, there was a suggestion about hiring externally. And I was just curious what hiring externally would look like.
I think that came from feedback from a woman who worked here for a while, and then is currently working in Colorado in EMS system, and they would hire people sort of as a lateral, but like just come in at a certain whatever position throughout. So the way most fire departments work is you have to start as a probationary and work your way up through the promotional ladder. And so their experience was that bringing some people in straight through to different leadership positions was what she had recommended.
Okay, thank you. And then the other thing was about, we were talking about physical ability tests. And I was just curious if you all actually have, along with the physical ability tests, which makes sense for certain aspects of your job, but also, is there a mental agility test that goes alongside with the whatever training, whatever you're required to do? I don't know if you call it that, but I called it that, mental agility test.
So I can answer that. I don't know what precisely you mean by mental agility. The hiring process at baseline, now this is for the Cadet Academy, involves obviously turning in an application. The first step then is a nationally validated multiple choice written examination. So it's not specifically designed for people with firefighting experience. It's a general aptitude type test. And there is a minimum passing score on that. Candidates who move through that go on to the physical agility testing. And then candidates who finish that go on to 2 rounds of interviews. The first round is a panel interview with a variety of personnel from the department. And we take the highest ranking candidates at that point to the chief's interview, where final selections are made. Once they get offered a position, they go through contingent offer testing, which involves a background check, psychological evaluation, and a drug screen, and a medical physical, I should say. So that's kind of the comprehensive. So did that answer your question? Or for mental agility, what were you thinking?
I think the aptitude test may cover it, and then maybe there's psychological tests, but maybe it would be helpful to look at the flow, and you could send that to us via email. I just want to see it. Like, I'm a visual person, so if you could see the flow of like what people have to go through.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's great. And then just one more question about the physical agility entrance exam. Who validates that?
So in 2019, the department hired a company, what's their name? I've got it written here, Fire and Police Selection Incorporated, and they do a validation process that involves giving out multiple questionnaires to individuals in the department related to what they consider their job tasks. For instance, as Chief Moya mentioned, we used to have a requirement to hoist a hose up a tower. Well, nobody hoists a hose up a building in Santa Fe. It just doesn't happen. So we got rid of it. Now they're the ones who use that information in addition to times that we put people through to validate the actual required time that was needed. And then they gave us those times that they recommended we use. And the course, obviously, that if we wanted it to be validated under their name, they designed it. So we basically set it up then once they designed it based on the feedback that they had received.
Okay. Yeah, that I didn't realize there was an external entity that was part of that process. So, okay. That's all I have. I don't know if there's any other questions from members of the task force. I don't see any other raised hands.
I have some questions.
Great.
So Chief Moya, so there are EMS departments within the state, like Albuquerque Ambulance, which is strictly EMS, just do responses to medical calls. I think the big disadvantage there is that they are not part of the fire retirement plan. Can you validate that and explain kind of how that works?
Councilor Rivera, yes. So yeah, we're a one-tier system. So we're the biggest one-tier system in the state where we run fire and medical calls. So by us doing that, we are able to provide better service to the community. We don't have to wait for an instance. Albuquerque Fire responds to a call, and if they don't necessarily need to take this call, they have to wait for Albuquerque ambulance to arrive to take that patient to the hospital. So we are able to do all of this. So we show up to the call, we are able to transport, say Med 1 transports and Engine 1 goes back to the station. We're able to, if we get another call in District 1, Engine 1 first responds and they render care first, and then our secondary ambulance, if it's coming from District 4 or District 3, respond to that call to assist. So we're not only trying to evaluate our fire trucks not running as many fires, but they're first responding for these units that are out of service. So that is the key point. We take on more responsibility being a one-tier system where we are not only providing medical care all the time, but we're also doing fires all the time. So we are the biggest department where we can do all these things, and we take pride in that. We are struggling where our medics are having a hard time, and that is something I am focusing on moving forward, where we are trying to get better at supporting our medics and being able to give them the tools they need, not just financial tools or giving them more money, but what else can they do to help them be better at their jobs and better that they want to stay as a paramedic. So I think those are the big keys that are different for Santa Fe Fire Department compared to anywhere else in the state. And that is where we're unique, is where we don't have to worry about an outside ambulance waiting. We're there for 30 minutes while we're helping render care to this person, and we have to wait for somebody else to transport. So we're able to do that all on our own.
So at our last presentation, we heard about the idea of getting social workers on the fire plan. And then tonight we heard about just hiring people for EMS work and not necessarily fire work, which could be done, but they wouldn't be part of that 20-year or 25-year retirement plan that the fire department has, because that's a fire plan. Is that correct? Is that a fair statement?
That is a fair statement. I think that is a lot to do with the future. If we want to go to the legislature and fight for the case managers that I have currently on my staff to get that, I'm on board 100%. I think there's some changes that we need to do moving forward, but currently that is how it stands, and that is something that we look forward to. I think Director Salazar might have something to add to that, but that is something that is required. It has to be a sworn officer or a sworn firefighter to get that plan.
Correct, Ms. Salazar.
Thank you, Councilor Rivera. I just wanted to add to the point that that is a PERA rule and not a city rule. So we have to abide by those para rules.
And those changes would have to be made by the legislature, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So it's not, I mean, we could make those changes, but then they wouldn't be, we couldn't on our own just make them part of the fire plan without being firefighters.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then Chief Moya, I wanted to ask you about how other departments in our area, in our region, compare to Santa Fe with regards to the number of women that have been hired.
Mr. Chair, yeah, Councilor Rivera, I did some research today. I just wanted to see if we're in left field and we're all by ourselves. I don't know if many of you know, but my wife is a firewoman. She's been with Santa Fe County for 14 years. She had to leave the field due to an injury. So she runs their mobile integrated health that Chief Mercado runs for us. So she's a one-man show over there with one council person that helps her. But I did some research, and currently Santa Fe County has 3 people in operations and 2 in support. Los Alamos only has 2 female firefighters. Currently, they have 1 that just got off probation and 1 chief officer. And Rio Rancho has 8 female officers. And the last time a female officer has been hired there was in 2018. So those are comparable departments that, similar in size to what we carry. We have 145 operational staff, and then I have a support staff on the other side. So I just kind of wanted to make sure I wasn't, Santa Fe Fire Department's all in left field. We're very unique and not hiring people. We haven't hired anybody in 10 years, but we're not out of the realm of, not many departments are hiring female. So it's not just Santa Fe Fire Department's problem. It's closer departments near us have the same issue that we're having.
Chief Rick, in our last hiring process, which I believe you have an academy running right now, I believe at Public Safety, we heard there were 5 women that had applied. Can you talk about where it is in the process that they were not moved on or not successful?
Counselor, I can't give you specific numbers off the top of my head just because I don't have those in front of me and I don't recall specifically. So I'm hesitant to give you specific numbers. I can tell you generically, the number of women who apply is consistently low. This is every year. And so certainly an increase in volume of applicants, I think, would be key to actually hiring more women onto the job. There's traditionally an equal fail rate at the written test between men and women. And then there is a notable fail rate for the few women who apply, pass the written test, and then get to the physical. That one has quite a high fail rate. We're dealing with very small numbers, but that would be the process that we see.
So did any of the women in this last process make it to the physical portion of the testing?
You mean, did they pass the written and make it to the physical?
Right.
Yes, several did. I don't recall the exact number. I want to say it was 5 or less.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
and it's worth noting, again, we're dealing with small enough numbers that how much we can take from them is challenging. Chief Moya mentioned that we do information sessions as a part of our pre-hiring process. And those are designed to help people understand what the fire department does. A lot of people have misinformation about that. And a big part of that day, which is a 4-hour just voluntary session, is we show them the physical ability course and we give them opportunities to practice it. We give them tips and tricks, and we've set it up so that knowing that this is a challenge for a number of people, they get to test out that day. And if they pass, they're done. Meaning this is before the hiring process even starts. We give them a cert and they pass through. We also let them retest basically on a weekly basis at that point. So there are numerous opportunities to retest. But for instance, we did have a female candidate or let me rephrase, she wasn't a candidate yet. This was during the pre-hiring phase. She passed that physical component, but she did not pass the written component and thus did not move on to the interview round.
And the written, you said, was just a general aptitude test?
Yeah, it's a 90 question multiple choice general aptitude test.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you for the information. Bruce, you have your hand up still? I don't know if that's an old hand or.
No, it's a new hand, sir.
Okay,
so
Bruce.
Thank you, Counselor. So I'm trying to understand the fitness portion, the requirement to get on the Santa Fe Police Department. So is it not a state standard, or is it a standard that Santa Fe has adopted? Because I'm just wondering why that if the officers aren't, I'm just that's it. I just wanted to know if we're following the state standards, or if it's a standard that we've adopted that the city has chosen.
And sir, I apologize. You said police department. You mean fire department, correct? Okay, just confirming. So there is no state standard. Whoop. Sorry, sir. You are muted.
Yeah, sorry. 40 years as a cop. It's sorry. Yes, sir. Fire department. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So the state does not have a standard course, for instance. That is part of the reason that we had that process validated by an outside company in 2019, because the prior one had not been formally validated, that had been in place for a number of years.
Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Very good. And then Faith and Ramos, just with regards to the presentation that was sent out earlier, on the second page, it says still employed at SFFD, and it says 2, but I've heard several times tonight that number is 3. And not that changed.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. There were 2. So I think of the 16 women who have worked in the fire department in the history, 13 responded to the survey, and 2 of those respondents are employees of the fire department now.
Okay, so one person chose not to respond that's currently employed.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
And I just wanted to just note that in addition to the one of the things that the diversity committee spent some time talking about also is just accepting the national, there is a kind of a better known national standard, the CPAT. And one thing that is seems like a super low cost fix for us would just be to accept the certification, if any applicants have it, of the national test.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? And I know Faith didn't say this, but when I was there, when she went through her physical agility and she smoked it, she smoked all the men in the, yeah, you did. Yeah, I remember. I could probably recite your time that you did it, but she did a great job. So I was proud to be able to bring her on when I was in training. So, but she did a great job. So she'll never say that about herself, but she smoked it. Bruce, you still have your hand up. I don't know if this is new or.
That's an old hand.
Okay, thank you,
sir.
Yep. Any other comments or questions from the committee before we move on? All right, thank you all for the information. Thank you, Director Salazar, for being here. Appreciate your comments, and then for all the fire department staff as well. So let's move on to item B, which is an introduction of restorative justice principles and practices. Marcella and Mary Louise to present.
Hi, Mary Louise, do you want to start or?
Hi, everyone. It's almost 7 o'clock and there's another presentation. And I feel like everything that we've heard is so important. but I also think that being meaningful and respectful of people's presentations is really important. And so what if we rescheduled us, if that's okay with you, Marcela, and we allow the third presentation to show up? Because I know that there's going to be questions in regards to restorative justice. And I want to say this now that I have the floor. I wasn't at my best. I didn't raise my hand, but I want to talk about what you all just talked about. And it's a perfect example, and it would have been a perfect segue into restorative justice. How do we make right our wrongs? And I'm going to step back and let Marcela speak, but I want us to think about, we don't have to be great to start, but we have to start to be great. And today's our day to walk away from this meeting and recognize what needs to be updated. And sometimes it's attitude, and it's the way that we show up every day at work, and the way we view people, and the way we see people. I see you. I just want you to know that. Marcela, go ahead and speak.
No, I'm perfectly fine. I think there will be a lot of questions about the intro, and I just don't think we have enough time, because that presentation went with the Q&A to over an hour and a half. It's about an hour and a half. So I don't know if the third presentation, if the folks are ready and if it can be compacted into a half hour or not. It's up to you all.
Yeah, Monica and Emily, do you think you guys can have your presentation done in 30 minutes?
Monica and I are looking confused because I don't think we had prepared to present this evening. I'm assuming you're speaking about the legislative update?
Yeah, we had that on the schedule. Okay. We talked about it at the last meeting. It was really just to give us an update of like public safety legislation that did and did not pass. It wasn't like this big formal thing. We had actually designated about 10 minutes to do it. I don't know if that's something you even want to just like off the cuff do that or wait till next time.
Or could we just send an update to the group in writing? I don't know, Monica, what you feel.
Yeah, no, I had no idea that we were going to present on, I guess, what passed and what didn't pass, and talking about why. There's a lot, there's so many different, it's something that, I mean, there's lots of publications that do that. We could certainly, I mean, I could certainly discuss it briefly, but it's really if people have questions or if there's something they were particularly interested in, we could go into it. But it's pretty easy. I mean, we could quickly say sort of what the package was. The other thing is that we don't know what she's going to sign and what she's not going to sign.
That's true. Yep. Well, it's up to you all. I think visually it was helpful when you all presented the initial legislation that had numbers and that whether it was in the House or Senate, and then where it was at. Emily did a great just update on where things were last time. So if you want to wait, or you could send it to us via email. I was just interested in like not all the ins and outs and the political fun that happened at the session for you all that were participants, but just so we know what was kind of coming down the pike and what actually passed and what didn't.
There's a wonderful bill that passed that was a harm reduction bill having to do with fentanyl test strips, which is amazing. Probably for many, probably the only extremely positive criminal legal reform bill that passed during the session, even though it's primarily a behavioral health element. And I'm sure Emily could talk about that bill at length. Sort of the other more positive criminal legal reform bills didn't quite make it. So we could talk about the new crimes that exist now, even though they could already be prosecuted under current law, but we like to sort of repackage and pass things to say, oh, here's a new way to prosecute the same conduct that was already illegal.
Yeah, Emily did share that with us last time.
Yeah, so I don't think there are necessarily any big announcements to make. You know, we can share in writing which bills passed, and potentially, you know, Monica, I'm happy to work on like how it might impact the work we do and only pull out those pieces of legislation. So, because I don't think we need to go through each bill that we had presented on the first, you know, month ago.
Right.
It would just be too cumbersome. So again, yeah, I think that, you know, as Monica mentioned, I think the big one that's sitting on the governor's desk is House Bill 52, which decriminalized the possession of drug checking supplies and devices so that people can check for purity and adulterants in their drugs, and allows for the distribution. And I think that's really important from a public safety and public health perspective for this group. And so I'm excited about that. The other ones I don't know are going to be that impactful, other than I did mention, and Monica, I haven't followed up about whether there's any additional funding that can be, the city can use if that was included in House Bill 68. So that was the only other one I feel like is super relevant for this group.
Yes, I think that what's going to be interesting is really looking into the budget, because oftentimes what happens is that the actual bill won't pass, but people were able to sneak money into the budget. Like, for example, the Crime Victim Reparation Fund got a huge boost, I think like over $1 million. And I believe that that's going to be recurring. So there's different programs that are going to receive injections of funding, including, and also big time for police training. That's primarily state police, but more of the substantive things didn't pass. So there was a bunch of stuff on training for law enforcement. I don't believe that went through, but I believe that it is going through the budget. So there's not going to necessarily be an expansion or any kind of control over what kinds of things they are trained on. There'll just be more money to be trained on the things that they are already trained on. As Emily mentioned, there's House Bill 68. This is sort of what the Senate and the House decided to do as the crime package. The governor's crime package, even though it was originally House Bill 68, kind of got really picked apart. But then in the end, they did get a bunch of things, and we could talk about what these are, but I don't think that it really necessarily impacts our work. There was a really interesting bill that I had mentioned during our like very quick 10-minute round or 5-minute round robin that day that had to do with municipal funding. I don't believe that didn't pass, but it's possible that and I'm sorry, this is the correction. The actual bill didn't pass, but the policy was put into the budget. And this was something that the New Mexico Sentencing Commission was also working on. But we're trying to sort of pick through that and make sure that it gets signed. So this is the other thing, is that we don't know what's going to actually make it into the final budget, what she's actually going to sign, because she does have the ability to pick some stuff out and sort of line item veto certain things in that budget. So we can definitely, I can definitely look into that part. And that was sorry, I'm just looking at some random notes, which was the violence intervention program with funding. We don't know what that's going to look like. There was a model, there's already a model that exists in Albuquerque, which has been operating since 2020. Or something along those lines, but it'll be interesting to see how this money will get allocated to different communities and sort of what it's going to look like. But I can certainly pick through that, because that seems actually relevant to our work and how that could be used. But any of the other really great stuff, it didn't quite make it through. It was a difficult year for a lot of us. And I'm happy to talk about that more. I would say that, both our beloved city councilors here on this task force are going to be accompanying me to go to Phoenix to a conference on fines and fees reform. I would say that local fines and fees reform is extremely important since we haven't yet been able to do any major comprehensive reform on a state level outside of the juvenile justice setting. So I would say we're going to come back from that particular conference with a lot more ideas that we can implement here. There was a really wonderful bill too, as far as with juvenile justice, that would eliminate life without parole. Really, the bill just gave children that were sentenced to life, it would just give them the option to have a hearing. It didn't release anybody. All it said is that in 15 years, you could be in front of a board to have a hearing to ask to be released. And that failed. So it was, and had vehement opposition by certain groups. And which was interesting because the bill didn't quite, I don't feel like the bill was that, it's not really that controversial. It's sort of just letting people ask to be let out. It doesn't require them to be released. So that got a lot of press also, because there are a lot of people, a lot of faith groups that are pushing it too.
All right, so as we, I don't know if we really want to talk about anything else, but really it sounds like Marcella and Mary Louise, you anticipate, I guess I should ask you, how long do you anticipate for a presentation and then question and answer session for our next meeting? Are we looking an hour again? Have you tried to anticipate that?
Yeah, we're ready to go. I mean, the truth is we could probably do it in a half hour. We were anticipating 3 presentations. But it is, I mean, that other presentation, I mean, I think that if we're going to do presentations that really are about sort of what this committee is tasked to do, which is to really sort of be innovative in our thinking, I think we have to think through our presentations, the timing, and the breadth of Q&A, which is great to get all the information. But I felt like I was on a public safety committee or at a city council meeting for a second there. And so we just need to go first next time, and we'll try to get it done in a half hour. If people have 10 to 15 minutes of questions, that's good.
All right.
So that's one. But I did want to add something to what Monica and Emily said, since, if that's okay, Councilor Rivera?
Definitely.
And this is just in part because, you know, we have a community health and public safety department now, and we as a committee are tasked with thinking beyond just sort of straight law enforcement issues, right? And so I just wanted to add that there was just a lot of money. We had a $1.6 billion surplus, a lot of money in housing. Families are going to get rebates of $250 or $500. We got an additional $10 million for families that did not get federal stimulus dollars in economic relief for the state. There's just the child's tax credit got passed. It's going to go into effect 2 years. And these things are community health and safety issues for all of us, right? Because people are getting more money in their pockets, more money to agencies. Even the Department of Workforce Solutions got more money this year, which is great, which means that they're going to be able to hopefully do a better job at enforcing wage and hour policies, as well as sick leave that's going to go into effect in July, mandated sick leave. So there was a lot of programming that got expanded as a result of our surplus that will lead to stronger community safety and health. I just wanted to throw that out there for everyone.
I'm so glad, Marcella, you mentioned that. The other piece, if you did say this, I apologize, I didn't catch it in the list, but the capping the payday loans. Again, like we know that people who are struggling financially end up being further criminalized and engaged in our criminal legal system and have poor health outcomes. So seeing some of those, there were some really good pieces of legislation that passed. Again, obviously some of those are sitting on the governor's desk. So maybe it'll be after the 20-day signing period, it'd be good to circle back around on some of these.
Yeah, and then just so everyone knows, I think I'd mentioned I had reached out to Ithaca in New York, who had been through our process, and we're they had similar issues with unions and other things. And they agreed to come speak to us at our next meeting. So I responded back to them and said, we'd love to hear from you. These are some of the issues we'd like for you to address. And then I haven't heard back from them. So they may be on the agenda for March 8th as well. So I'm not going to promise that you go first, Marcella.
No, it's fine, Counselor. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. It's fine. We just want to go first so that we don't feel rushed at the end because we took such a long time. But obviously, Ithaca, I mean, they have a big presentation to make, and so we should give them the time they deserve. So if they say no, then we're happy to go, and we're ready. We have our PowerPoint ready to go. We practiced yesterday, right, Mary Louise? And so anytime.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure that was out there before we promised anything or said anything else. So any other questions or comments? I don't think we can do a lot more in 15 minutes. I'm looking forward to the conference in Phoenix with Monica, and I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. Hopefully we can do some great things when we get back, and hopefully provide some information that this committee can make recommendations to the governing body that can then move forward and really do some good things for our community. So looking forward to that as well. Any other questions or comments?
One thing that I wanted to add, just as far as the legislative session, another really great thing that was stripped out of House Bill 68 was the creation of I'll just say, of a police database for police officers that have had discipline or other type or firings, these sorts of things. This was actually removed, which is pretty interesting, and I think extremely relevant to sort of some of the work that we're doing. A lot of the pushback has to do with employment law. And I've been thinking about this a lot, specifically because my mother is a nurse, and I was looking at the Board of Nursing. And the Board of Nursing actually posts all of their decisions that they make against a license. Same thing for me with this is interesting though, because it has to do with a license, right? Which sometimes can be a little bit different. But for me as a lawyer, if I get reprimanded, that's posted in the bar bulletin, right? And sent publicly to everybody that something happened. So I think it's something that, an opportunity for us to think more, to be more innovative when we think about police discipline, especially in a state where oftentimes officers bounce from department to department, and this should be something that police should support, right? Because they don't want to be considered, it hurts when you have a good cop, it hurts their reputation when they're working with somebody that, has been in 4 different departments and acted very poorly. So it was too bad that was removed. That was removed, it seemed like, by the request from the governor's office by Senator Peterworth on the floor. And supported by the rest of the Senate and the House. So it wasn't just these people, but it's an interesting thing to talk about discipline.
Yeah, definitely. So, a lot of things in the legislature happen now. And when does the governor have
to sign? Of March.
7th? So we'll have a lot more information after that. Okay.
Emily, you had your hand up. Do you want to add something?
I have an unrelated question, so I can wait until this topic's over.
I think you're good, Emily, if you want to.
Okay, great. I was just curious, and I know this was presented on last meeting, and I feel like I didn't retain what was presented on about the status for the community consultation work, and what the update might be.
For the community engagement? Yeah, maybe Chris has an update. So that we're kind of getting into matters from the task force. Can we go to Mary Louise if it's still related to the topic on legislative updates or?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great.
So I heard, Monica, I heard you say that about discipline with cops. And I just want to put this out there. When Renee, we asked you to send questions to different departments. And one of my questions isn't what discipline looks like, because I know that we look at, just like you were talking about, Monica, like I'm held to a higher standard. My stuff is pushed out there. My biggest concern with wearing my restorative justice hat is not what discipline looks like, but how are we responding to misbehavior? And so I want to put that out there because, you know what, we're not going to change what's hid under the rug, but we need to know as a task force how things are being responded to, what kind of tools are what is the reparation, what is the department, in the police department, any department, doing to respond to the misbehavior and to repair the harm. And it's really looking at crime, because that's crime oftentimes, in a different lens. It's recognizing that people have been harmed, and what are we going to do to repair that harm? And so discipline is, in my eyes, sometimes very punitive, and I'm not interested in punitive. Sorry, but on this task force, I really want to be part of the solution. And having laws that allow people to see someone's record is one thing, but even seeing that record, if there's no reparation, how good are we? And so I just had to put that out there because, of course, Marcela and I are going to talk about restorative justice, and that's part of restorative justice. And I really want us to walk away, if this is all you hear from me, is going from, instead of pointing the finger, what am I doing to make that better? And that's what I want to do on this task force, is I want to do whatever I need to do to use my voice, so that I'm going to put this on counselors Chris and Renee, that what are you going to do with what we give you? So I'm going to hold you to a high standard because I love you guys, but you know what? You're going to take this back to your peoples, and we have to update our behavior because we're not in 2016 anymore.
We hear you. And I think that's what we're here for. So appreciate the comment. Anybody, Monica?
I'm good. I appreciate all. I think there's wonderful ways that we can work on, law enforcement in that way, so that it'd be amazing if there was a restorative justice process for officers that had excessive use of force in the community, right? I've never, ever heard of that happening. I think that the idea behind this is to try to stop those police from continually being hired because they're brutalizing certain communities. And then there is no repercussion. That's sort of the whole thing, right? Is that they just sort of continually get passed around. But I think it would be amazing if there was some sort of, if there was a different process to repair sort of how that happened, right? Like, why did they end up in that particular place? I actually have a story for you, if everybody will indulge me for a moment, which was, there's a state police officer who I actually have a decent amount of respect for because he was honest. And he told me over in the course of a pretrial interview, that he was in trouble 10, 15 years prior, because he tased somebody that was handcuffed to a bench. And that because of that action, the state of New Mexico had to have stronger training for all law enforcement officers around tasers. And he was extremely honest, where most officers in that situation would lie to me and not tell me about what happened because I had no access to his file. He told me this entire story that was on the record, recorded, and told me sort of what he learned from it. And he never tased somebody again that was handcuffed in the station. And hopefully that story actually helped other officers. I really appreciated that he did that. And it sounded like he had changed some of his ways. So I think that there is some power in people being honest and doing that, but I appreciated that. And it also resulted in better training for law enforcement. So I think there's ways we can figure out how to do that. The question is, do we have the teeth, to your point, Mary Louise, about our city councilors, do we have the teeth to actually push those policies so that they become law, or we have that sort of sustainable change? I hope so.
Me too. Marcella, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up. Thank you all for that. Part of it, and maybe we should do more than 30 minutes. We were really just planning on doing a sort of an introduction to the principles with some really good examples of what other communities are doing. And then we're going to have people come in as a part of panels from those communities. And in just serving these incredible DA, court, community-led, police involvement in RJ programs, I was struck, even in preparing the presentation for you all, how far behind New Mexico is. We really don't have these programs in New Mexico. And there are hundreds of programs that are incredible in every part of the criminal justice system all over the country and world, really. And it's amazing that we have very few, if any, to look at as examples. But that means that we actually have to, and when you ask the question, Monica, because you've asked me this question, well, what jurisdictional authority do we have in certain cases? And a lot of that we may not, but we have to do something to start changing the hearts and minds and culture of our community so that we can continue to build support for the kinds of programs that are pretty incredible all over the country that are not here anywhere in New Mexico. So part of what our plan, just to tease you a little bit, is just what we were thinking about what our own objectives were for a half-hour presentation. And really it's to provide our committee with a common, you may not agree, Bruce may not love this as an ex-law enforcement official, but I suspect he will. I know he's off now, or he at least turned his camera off, is we just wanted to provide a common vernacular for us so that whenever we say restorative justice, people are understanding the breadth of programs that means, the multidisciplinary and multi-jurisdictional approaches that means. We're just trying to create a common vocabulary for the approaches that when we talk about transformative justice, restorative justice, and diversion programs that include restorative justice. So that's what you guys can expect from our presentation, maybe next meeting or maybe 2 meetings from now.
So as I'm hearing you, I'm thinking more of like a 30-minute presentation and at least 30-minute question answer, 30 to 45-minute question answer is what's kind of playing out in my mind. Does that seem fair?
Yeah, it can be, I think, yeah, a good 45 minutes. I mean, this is it. We're supposed to be leading each other and the community through a process of education here. So we're game.
Yeah, just so we know how to structure the agenda moving forward. So appreciate that. Anyone else with matters from the task force? Councilwoman Villarreal.
Well, we didn't do working group updates, but I did want to let you know that we have not heard back from staff about those questions yet and when they're going to provide us with answers. So that's still in the works, and I will ping them, say, hey, can you let us know when you think you could get these to us. And part of it's also because they're in the process of the hiring process for the police chief. So just as a reminder, I don't know if you all participated in the survey, but I would love for you to share that with folks you think would be willing to share. That you don't have to, it's anonymous. There were no, the survey is also in Spanish, and we have not received any Spanish responses yet from what I heard from staff recently. So I don't think that's very good. However, I did hear the community panels went well, the community panel and then the public safety related panel. There were 2 different panels. They weren't open to the public, but yeah, I don't know if anyone has anything to share about that, but I think that was important, and staff is going to whittle it down to the top 2 or 3. And then there'll be an opportunity for counselors to ask questions. I'm not sure when that's supposed to happen. And then there's some kind of public engagement piece. So that's all for like working groups. I don't know if the other working group had an addition to or update for us. Marcela.
Well, Mary Louise and I put that presentation together. That's our working group update, which is a part of the alternative approaches section. But I just wanted to add, and I don't know, Monica, if you were a part of the public safety one. I didn't see you listed in the paper, but I was a part of the community panel one. And all last week we did, and I just want to share, because none of it's like super confident. I'm not going to share information about them, but I wanted to share with you all the process. I mean, it was about 8 people who interviewed, and we all got to maybe ask 1 or 2 questions in a short amount of time, but really kind of get a sense of people. We have their resumes, their letter of interest. We have to fill out community survey or like a feedback form that we're going to get to them by the end of this week, to Kira, I guess. And we're also going to have 1 Zoom debrief session where we can actually, which I really appreciate, where we can actually talk with each other about what our impressions were of these folks. And as you all saw, probably in the paper, it's out of town folks and people in from Santa Fe. And so I think it went well, and let's see how what we don't know is how our community feedback forms are going to weigh in on it. I do want to say that our city manager, I guess, who gets a new city manager who gets a big say in who gets hired, I guess, with the mayor, sat in on every single one. And I do want to say this, one of the things that I really appreciated about it was that he is new to the position, and I had never met him before, but he was there, so we got to meet him. And what I really liked was that he got to sit and not only hear the police candidates, but to hear us talk about the things that were important public safety wise to the different community groups. And to me, that made that whole process worth it.
Well, that's great to hear, because by our charter, it's the city manager's decision on who to hire. The mayor only hires city attorney, city clerk, and city manager. So in theory, yeah. Emily, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the work group conversation. And it's more of a question, because in our work plan, in our respective work group plan, we are working towards developing presentations and panel conversations for this group. And it'd be helpful to know what that timeline looks like. I had I'm starting to reach out to folks to be on the panel for alternative response around traffic, behavioral health, and drug possession. I had a conversation with Local Progress. I don't know if folks know who they are, but they support, they have members all across the country, usually electeds, but they put out issue briefs on all kinds of issues, and they do have some really interesting information around alternative responses that they're providing to their members, and they're willing to come and present to this group. So just love to know, sort of, as we start doing some of the, curating some of these panels, we know what the timeline looks like. And then just a reminder, if we can get an update on the community engagement. Thanks.
When you say timeline, Emily, are you talking about making sure that we have spaces to do that, or that we want to finish certain presentations in a certain amount of time before? What did you?
The former spaces, so that as we reach out to folks, we can say, you know, we're looking to host this on, you know, April, whatever, you know, just so we can have a timeline to do that work.
Maybe we can have Valeria give us a calendar so that we start plugging them in and that we can all see it, and that we won't stray from that unless some changes, like Ithaca decides not to come the next time. Just so you know, we sent out notes saying, hey, we're having 3 presentations. If you all thought that, like, no way, because I was kind of like, 3 presentations, and it didn't work out. So we just have, this is our second try. I think we should just stop doing 3 presentations. 2 is pushing it, but you know, I think it'll depend on the topic. So I'll let Valeria know about a calendar so we can look at that together. And Chris, do you have any updates on the community engagement contract?
No, I think Kira's been so wrapped up in the police chief hiring that we really haven't had a chance to really spend meaningful time on it. So hopefully here soon.
She did ask me for the contact info for Dr. Sanchez. So I'm hoping that with that meant she actually reached out to make sure that they could get the scope of work together.
Well, I think I asked her to do that, but I don't think she's really had time. So I don't know if I should let her kind of go through this process or really start bugging her to multitask.
Yep, we need to get that
multitask. We all multitask.
We all do it.
We want to get that started because he already has this, you know, he already has the proposal and everything is ready to go. It just has to get finalized, money, procurement, all of that stuff wise.
Yeah, I hear you. I'll touch base with her tomorrow and see kind of where she's at on that.
Good.
Anything else, Erin? Go ahead, Erin.
Any other matters?
Well, thank Eli for hanging out with us.
I hope it wasn't inappropriate. No, I think all this is super interesting and relevant. So I don't often have the time to get on, but it was enjoyable for me. So thank you.
Eli, I know who you are, Eli, but we expect you next week for our other presentation.
Tuesday night?
I thought you were a new member. I was like, who is this person? Is he a new member of the task force? How lovely.
Did you introduce yourself? I don't think you officially got introduced.
So I'm the chief of the training division for the fire department. So yeah.
And you can definitely join us anytime you want. The next meeting is March 8th, y'all. That's in 2
How's
weeks.
your mental agility, Eli? No, I'm joking.
Hey,
I like it.
I knew what you meant. I knew what you meant, Renee.
I like it.
I hired Eli when he was 19 years old.
I was 21, counselor, 21.
Oh, sorry, 21.
It's been 18 years, so.
I'm feeling old. Well, great. With that, our next meeting is Tuesday, March 8th. Yeah, Tuesday, March 8th. Renee has something else to say, I can tell.
No, Annie's like, now more. I like your haircut, by the way, Annie. You could jump off if you want. I just want to make sure we are set with Marcela and Mary Louise presenting at the next meeting with potential for Ithaca to also present.
Ithaca, this is, I think, what happened. Ithaca is a big presentation, right? And these are the kinds of presentations we want. These are the kinds of panel presentations because it goes to sort of the bigger, innovative things that we're supposed to be really thinking through. And so I think it's going to be hard to do 2 presentations of that, like that in one meeting. Yeah. So I think what we decided, or, you know, Councilor Rivera, if they say yes, then we're happy to cede that space to them. And if they say no, then we want to go first.
All right, good. We hear you. And Monica, Dave Jenkins told me to tell you hello.
Who?
David Jenkins.
Oh, the prosecutor?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I loved it. He's actually a former fire. And yeah, he was a baby attorney that we used to, I trained as baby a public defender. Yeah, because we're all baby prosecutors or baby public defenders at one point, and he was a baby prosecutor, and I really appreciated him.
Yeah, had a lot of great things to say about you too. So. Oh, good. Yeah, no, I appreciated him. See, there's wonderful people that go into law enforcement. They can do a really good job, right? Especially when they have, can I just say this real quick? He came from fire. So he had a really interesting perspective that I think was so useful then as being a thoughtful prosecutor, right? Like it's these experiences, these real life experiences that makes it so that we can have a safe community. I know we're all over, but I appreciate that. Thank you, Counselor. Thanks. All right, next meeting Tuesday, March 8th. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Good night, everyone.
And hey, Renee,
Monica, and all of you, by the way, tomorrow night, we are getting input on what we should be budgeting. Like the public can weigh in about what priorities that the budget should have in it. Oh. So I'm going to send it out social media, but if you could tell any of your contacts that have any interest in sharing perspectives on that for our budget this year.
Does that include ARPA?
No.
Okay, I'm just curious, because did you guys make ARPA decisions already? Because I've been waiting for my $2 million for immigrant families.
We're waiting too, Marcela, of what the plan is for that. This is specifically about the next fiscal year budget. And if there's anything you want to share about in the public realm about public safety or anything that's related to your jobs or your networks, people can come at 7 and log on to be heard from petitions from the floor. So
you don't know when that ARPA money gets decided, because the council is going to weigh in. That's what Kira told us.
No, we haven't seen anything yet. And I've been asking about it and I haven't heard anything yet. So
I just want to say this, super exciting. The city is actually funding an elementary restorative justice person. And so I would love for you guys to see, I was helping her to do her stats, but I think that you would love what our elementary person has already done. And she's working at all the schools. So you could just imagine how we're overwhelmed. She does all elementary and I do middle and high school, but you guys don't fund me. You're only funding the elementary. And I'm hoping that the city will also be funding a middle school person, because that would help me so much. But I'm sharing that with you so you know.
How does that get funded? Through the city, or is that the school district?
So
is it through Julie?
Yes, it's through Julie and Kira. So they, you know what? It's the Office of Student Wellness that does all of that part. I do all the training, like homeboy over here, Eli. But I do the training for our restorative justice people. In really building those relationships with students so that they feel a sense of belonging. But I want to tell you, our elementary restorative justice person, I just helped her with a case of kids, 3rd graders, calling a Black kid the N-word. And the parents just really being so lovable and allowing us to create a safe space so we could have those conversations. So actually tomorrow night, I'm actually going to be facilitating a closing meeting, because the kids have already met. And then we brought in those that were affected by the word, the N-word. So we've done those circles. But the last part that we're doing is bringing all of the parents together along with their kids to celebrate their kids and to allow the adults to learn from the kids about how this behavior impacts us as a whole and as a community. So cool stuff. But I thank the city for investing in restorative justice in schools. So thank you guys for that.
You should send, or if you could participate and say that, if that's something else we should think about budgeting through the community services division. So if you want to send me an email to say that that's how you feel, if you can't make it to the petitions from the floor, but I think that's an important addition.
Can I send you guys just so you could see the quarterly report so that you could see how many students have been served and what's happened ever since? There's pictures of their value. I mean, it's a beautiful thing that we're doing in elementary.
Whatever you want to send us, and also what you're asking, that request for additional funding for restorative justice, middle schooler, I think, middle school person, but just so we could then share it if you can't make it to speak about it, that we could share it with the council.
Absolutely. I'm going to get that to you tonight. Should I send it to everybody so you guys could see what's happening? Okay, I'm going to send it. If you don't want to see it, don't open it. But I think it's important. I think it's important for you to know that if you have a child that's in the Santa Fe Public Schools, that we are a resource, and your babies are our babies. And they need to have a place where they're safe, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, to have a voice. Just saying.
Awesome. Thanks, Mary Louise.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
you. Thanks for sticking with us, Eli.
Renee and Chris, can you hold on a sec? I just, in response to that, the other thing that Julie just said is that they have a RFP. And so that means that they might have had the money, but your Councilor Villarreal resolution in 2017 on the sort of renewed sanctuary policy, even though we don't call it, called for a language access assessment. And 4 years have passed, the pandemic has passed, it's never happened, and Julie's putting an RFP out for it now. I don't know if she's using money that's already been allocated to it, or if she's doing it trying to get money for this next year. But the Immigration Committee, we did a whole set of recommendations on what that language access assessment would be a part of. And so she took that and put it into the RFP. I'm not sure if it's money that's already been allocated, although I doubt it, but it could be money. So I wanted to put that on your radar because part of it, I know it's connected to this. It's doing an assessment of all the agencies and what the needs are, including fire, EMT, safety, fire, all public safety services, and police as well.
I got an update from our city clerk about that. And I was also like, it's about time, because I remember 2 budget hearings ago, the amount was like insignificant. So we would have gotten it. We'll get to it. And did you think that that got part of the budget later on? No.
So is it a part of the budget now already?
We're still recording, by the way.
It's okay.
Yeah. Renee, you can't stop the recording.
I've tried. I'm trying.
It's okay. It's all public information. I just wanted to put that on your radar.
I absolutely think so. But if Marcela, if anyone can reiterate why that's important at the meeting, then it's fresh on people's minds.
And it's so important. I think I'll be happy to do that. And counselors, part of the reason why, I mean, we just lived through 2. I think the city did a fairly good job on language access around all things pandemic, and the Immigration Committee, you know, we did a series of Facebook Lives and the whole bit. But yeah, the pandemic really showed how absolutely crucial it is that every government have a very, very strong
long overdue and I feel like I'm
language
like
access plan.
I agree. It's long overdue, and I've been like talking about this since I started on council, and everyone's
it's coming to fruition.
And now I know. Okay.
I just wanted to share that and put it on your radar, because it may or may not come up in the budget hearings. I don't know.
It better.
Thanks both counselors. Appreciate
I like your yes vote, Chris.
Are you voting yes?
Trying to find a way to stop recording.
I tried to.
Now I can't get rid of the.
Hi, Marcela. Thank you.
See ya.
I guess we could jump off.
Yeah.
And you can talk to me about anything else on the phone.
Yeah, I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, I'm around.
Okay.
Bye. Good night.